Hello, hello, hello. This is CRP speaking to you live. How's it going? I hope you're doing well. And as usual, I just want to confirm that the audio levels are okay. So can you give me a little hands up if you can hear me properly? I'd appreciate it. Great. Thanks so much. Let me put everybody's hands down. And I assume also that you can see the image. It says how to leave the USA with a purple background. If you can see it, please raise your hand. Fantastic. Great. Terrific. Thank you so much for joining me on this post-election stream. I'm not going to be talking about the election. I think that a lot is going to happen between now and January 20th. And so we will see what happens. I just want to lay down the law that I think that the 2020 election is fraudulent. It's very obvious because the Republicans picked up, what is it, 7 or 8 House seats and at least 1 Senate seat. It seems very obvious that there was a red wave. And I find it impossible to believe that people voted for the Republican ticket, but when it came to the president, they voted for Joe Biden. That historically is just not the case. And when a president, a sitting president, wins the House and the Senate, or at least improves his position in the House and the Senate, his party's position in the House and the Senate, it's usually he just wins by a landslide. So, or at least if not a landslide, then just by a comfortable margin. So I think that this is all bullshit. And I think that it ought to come out. And I think that I've said many times that I don't like Donald Trump, but I far prefer him to the crazies in the future Biden-Harris administration. Really, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, I think she's an evil person, to tell you the truth. She slept her way to the top. She is a political animal who has never won an election, a significant election. She's always been a party toady. I think that she's an awful, awful human being. And I think that if she becomes president, our lives will significantly deteriorate. Okay. And so with that thinking, that's why I decided to do this webinar. Now, this webinar, you got to keep in mind how to leave the USA. Here's the outline of the whole thing. I hope you can see it. I hope it's not too small. And if it is, well, later you'll see the recording, and later in the recording it'll be nice and sharp, and you'll be able to read it all properly. But this is for people in the US who might think it's time to leave, okay? Now, there are a couple of points that I want to make before I get into the meat and potatoes of this issue. See, you know, the United States, I've said this before in other webinars, the United States military has war games to invade Canada, okay? That will never happen, okay? At least not in our lifetimes or our children's lifetimes. But they do have those plans, and they update them periodically. It's a good exercise. Nobody seriously thinks that the United States military is going to invade Canada, that the US will declare war on Canada and just like, start bombing Montreal or something, okay? Nobody seriously thinks that. The military does not seriously think that. But it's smart to gameplay, to war game different scenarios. And this is one of them. You might have no real intention of leaving the United States. You might think that, oh, President Biden is going to be horrible, President Harris is going to be awful, I want to leave. And you might think about it, but not really, okay? Yeah, same token, that's perfectly fine, okay? It's smart to be wargaming different possibilities, number one. Now, the ideas I'm going to be discussing here, they might help you if you're living in another country, because I'm positing all of this as you're living in the United States and you want to leave the United States. But it could be that you're in some other country, first world, third world, whatever world. And this presentation might give you ideas as to where to go and why to go to a different place, okay? And it also, if you're living in the United States, it might give you ideas as to whether to change the place you're living in the United States, you see? Because a lot of times we find ourselves living in a particular place in a big country like the US, and we're deeply unhappy, but it's because of that particular place, not necessarily the country in and of itself, okay? And so this is sort of like, it's a mental exercise, but it's also a way that you can seriously start considering how to leave the United States. I mean, for real, okay? That's how I wrote it. I wrote this presentation as how to go about it for real, Before anything, you have to keep in mind one true thing, that there is no nirvana for everyone, okay? Everybody, I mean, in Spanish, we have this saying that the shoe tightens itself in different places. Yeah, for each person, well, I can't translate it properly because it's sort of like idiomatic, but the idea is that, see, a shoe fits one person and then it might not fit another. And maybe their foot actually does fit in the shoe, but it doesn't feel comfortable for one person, but it feels exceedingly comfortable for another, because the shoe tightens for different feet. That's actually the expression. Uh, Different people will find different places nirvana. Some people like the Caribbean, for instance. They think that the Caribbean, is fantastic. I hate it. I hate the sand. I hate the heat. I hate the goddamn sun. I much prefer the cold. I much prefer, if you tell me you could go 3 weeks to Ibiza, or 3 weeks to Mustique, or 3 weeks to skiing in Switzerland, no question. I love the cold. I love the snow. Fucking A, I'm there. You see? And other people would be like the complete opposite. And so there is no one place for everyone. There is no nirvana. Anybody who thinks that there's a nirvana is fooling themselves. And so if you start talking about like, oh, well, what about this place or that place? I don't know, because it depends on you, not on me. See, some people might think that Tasmania is a horrible place, but for you, it might be perfect, because there might be things in Tasmania. I mean, I have no idea what is in Tasmania, but there might be things in Tasmania that for you make it perfect, make it a nirvana for you. Not for me and not for any other person, but for you, yes. See? So you asking me about Tasmania, for instance, it's going to be a complete waste of time. You have to think about yourself. You have to examine yourself, which is the key issue. Okay? Okay, we'll get to that in just a moment, but I just want to emphasize this. There is no nirvana for everyone. Everyone's nirvana is unique to every person. Each of us has our own nirvana. Okay? Okay. Now, the first thing you have to consider is, why are you going? Why are you leaving the United States? What's the point of it? Hmm? See, it could be that you have no opportunities. That's why most people move, emigrate, because they have no opportunities, or they have very limited or reduced opportunities. And that's one reason. A second reason, and by the way, the no opportunities reason, that's the number one reason for the vast majority of people, okay? Now, the second reason is that you feel persecuted or you've lost your freedom. Most people aren't affected by this. Most people talk about freedom, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, I want to live in a free place and blah, blah, but they don't really care, And it's quite obvious why, because see, if you're living in a place it could be a totalitarian place. I mean, Nazi Germany, right? But if the regime doesn't really touch you, affect you in any meaningful way, you get to do your job and enjoy your pastimes and enjoy your family, and the regime, no matter how awful, doesn't affect you at all, then you don't really care. I mean, I lived in Chile during the Pinochet dictatorship, right? And I protested against the Pinochet dictatorship, but hand to heart, it didn't affect me at all. Not one iota. I protested against the Pinochet dictatorship because I was, 19 and stupid, and also because I wanted to pick up hippie chicks. So that's why I was doing that. But in a realistic sense, nothing that the Pinochet regime did ever affected me, not one iota. And in fact, a lot of things that they did affect me in a positive way, like the healthcare system and a lot of other things that they were doing. Basically, popular capitalism is what they called it. And it was very, very good for a lot of people, myself included. But of course, at the time, I didn't realize it. It was, dictatorship bad. Ooh, let's protest the dictator, bad dictator. But you see my point. Most people don't experience a loss of freedom. It's very few people. And most people are not persecuted. A lot of people claim to be persecuted. And I'm not going to lie, a lot of YouTubers are of that mentality too. Oh, I'm persecuted. YouTubers are actually, it's actually kind of true, because it's very easy for YouTube to just cut off your income. And it's very easy for YouTube to just kick you off the platform altogether. After years of having worked very hard, and then all of a sudden, because you said the wrong thing, something political, something perhaps innocuous, but they didn't like it. They just didn't like it, by the way, okay? You didn't break any rule. They just didn't like it, and they kick you off. That's kind of like persecution. So sometimes you might hear a lot of it, from online creators. but it's a specific niche of online creators, specifically those who comment on politics and current affairs and life in general. Those are the people who get persecuted. But if you're just a regular person, you have to ask yourself honestly, are you persecuted? Yes or no? Mhm. Now, the third issue is, of course, there's a high cost of living or excessive taxation. What's going on in California, for instance? A lot of people are leaving California because they think the taxes are way too high. They're blowing between federal and state taxes. They're blowing over 50% of their earnings on taxes, and it bothers them. And yeah, they can get discounts and tax deductions and whatnot for different reasons, right? But still, over 50% taxation, that's excessive. And some places, the cost of living is so high that it's like not worth it. Mhm. And one of the things that's going on with the whole lockdown, for instance, is that a lot of people were living in very expensive places, high cost of living. And now they get to work from home and they're realizing, hey, since I can work from home, I can work from any home, anywhere. I don't have to be in this very expensive city. And so they're fleeing New York City, they're fleeing Chicago, Boston, Washington, San Francisco. In Europe, this has become an endemic thing. People are moving to small towns far away because it's so much cheaper. So, yeah. So anyway, those are generally the three reasons to go. Now, you have to really ask yourself why you're leaving. And it's more important, to not to be leaving, but to be going. I'll explain that in just a minute. But you really have to ask yourself, what's the issue that's driving you? Now, if you seriously think that you're going to lose your freedom and that you can potentially be attacked somehow, okay, that you will be persecuted, unjustly persecuted, and that's pretty severe, okay? That's the situation, for instance, Jewish people found themselves in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, before the Second World War started. Remember, the Holocaust started in 1941, when they started systematically killing Jews. Before then, during the 30s especially, it was just an issue of generalized harassment. Now, if you feel that there's generalized harassment towards you because of the group that you belong to, I mean, in this case, obviously, it's because you're conservative. You're probably white, you're probably conservative, Trump vote or something like that, and you feel that you're being persecuted and that you don't have opportunities because of the color of your skin, well, then it would be sensible for you to be thinking whether you should leave or not. Now, in a Biden-Harris administration, there's going to be fewer opportunities for white people because they're going to be giving them all to people of color, as they say. And there will be persecution of people who don't like this. And there's going to be a lot of indoctrination. Quality of life is something else I should have put there, I forgot. Because like, for instance, I have a friend of mine who works in consulting, and his job is very white collar, high end. And even he's getting these stupid diversity training things, and it's driving him up the wall, okay? And he knows that with the Biden-Harris administration, he's gonna get that like wall to wall of that shit. And basically all it does is say that he's a bad person, and he's sick of it, right? And so, yeah, that's you have to analyze for yourself why you want to go, if it's really worth it, and more to the point, if it's going to get worse. Okay, that's a key issue, because see, there were some Jews in Germany in 1933 who saw the writing on the wall and left. Like, for instance, Anne Frank's parents. Otto Frank was her father, and I forget the name of her mother. But the Frank family moved from Germany to the Netherlands in like 33 or 34 because they saw how Germany was going. They never thought that the Germans would be able to easily and successfully invade and capture Holland. But that's what they did. They moved, because they saw the writing on the wall, and they realized that the persecution that Jews were experiencing was only going to get worse. Okay, so you got to be thinking about that. Now, where to go? That's the key question. That's the question that always people ask. Where to go? Where is the nirvana? There is no nirvana. Okay. Now, the first thing you have to be thinking is you don't want to be leaving the U.S. You want to be going to some place that you prefer, that you would be happier in. Okay. Now, this changes the dynamic, because when you're leaving a place, you're on the run. You're running in fear. But when you're going to some place, it's because that place is attractive to you. It has things that opportunities, whatever benefits that you do not currently enjoy in the United States or anywhere else for that matter. This shift in dynamics, this shift in mentality is really useful, because if you're fleeing from something, you'll go anywhere. Think about it. You know, like a lion is chasing you. You were standing there and all of a sudden, boom, a lion appears and you start running because you're fleeing the lion, you're leaving the lion, right? You'll go anywhere. You won't notice that maybe the lion is driving you into a trap, for instance, right? But if you are, you know, there's a lion there, right? And you're thinking, oh, that lion eventually is going to realize that I'm here and he's going to run and eat me. And instead of you just running, you start looking around and trying to find a place where you would want to go where the lion can't eat you. You see? And you see that there's like a pole, and the pole, you know, you can climb it, but you know that the lion can't. So where do you go? You go to the pole, right? Say it's a flagpole, just to give a hypothetical, crazy hypothetical, but you see what I'm saying, see? You run to that flagpole that you know that the lion cannot climb, but that you can, because you know you're a primate after all. You know, you can hold on with your legs and pull yourself up with your hands and get to the top, and you know, be free of the lion. You see the difference? One person is just reactive. That is, the person leaving, the person fleeing is reactive and reacting blindly. Whereas the second, the person who decides to go to the flagpole, he's proactive. It's a different mentality. It's a very different mentality. Okay? So think of it, first of all, in those terms. Now, the first issue that you should be thinking about as to where to go is, what are your priorities? See? What is it that you want from life? Now, this is a very hard question to ask, because a lot of people never give it any kind of serious consideration. But you should be thinking to yourself, what do I want? Do I want to be rich? Do I want to have a rich social life? Do I want to have a rich family life? Or do I want to just have a lot of stuff? See, if you want to have a lot of stuff, I mean, actually, the United States is the perfect place. You can get boatloads of stuff. But if you want other things, other intangible things, if you want to be living in a place that provides you a sense of peace and tranquility, or perhaps excitement, or perhaps this or that, whatever it is, you have to figure out first your priorities, okay? Figure out what matters to you. Is it finances? Is it social life? Is it family life? Is it a professional life? A lot of professions, you know, top tier people, they go to the United States, but there are some disciplines and some things that's better elsewhere, not in the United States. You'd be surprised, see? So you have to figure out what your priorities are. What is it that you want? What kind of shape of a life do you want to have? Okay? That's the first thing. And the easy thing to do is really just take a yellow legal pad and write it, not on a computer, but like longhand. Write out what is important to you. And it'll take you a number of pages to figure it out, because a few people can just sit there and instantly say, this is important. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, done. Very few people can do that, if any, frankly. It takes a while to be thinking about what is important. What are your priorities? Write them down, figure them out, okay? Okay, that's number one. Number two, you want to be considering places where your skills can match up with the place and or the people there. Because a lot of people think of going someplace and they think of the place. They don't think of the people. Ultimately, you interact with people more than the place. The place is just the setting. It's the stage. But people are the other actors of that particular play. You got to be thinking about those people, and you have to be thinking, what skills do I have that they might need? You see? In a previous video, quite some time ago, before I did webinars, I suggested looking into moving to Africa. Yeah, because Africa is poor in skills, not in resources. It's rich in resources, but poor in skills. If you're somebody skilled with the right skill set, Africa is like a gold mine to you, literally. You know, you can wind up moving to Africa with the skills you have and just becoming a very, very big fish. In the United States, you would have been just a small fish in a big pond. There, it's the exact opposite, because most people think of Africa as horrible. That's not. Yeah, sure, it doesn't have a lot of things that are a lot of conveniences that we have in the West, but it's perfectly fine places. Nigeria, there are many nice places in Nigeria, so it's not like a hellhole. It's not as successful a country as Western European countries. And if you're poor and unskilled in Africa, it is a shithole. But if you're skilled, if you're a Westerner, you can find a lot of opportunities in Africa. That's why I made that video. See? And that's the point. See, if you have skills that some place in particular might find valuable, the people there would find them valuable. That should be on your list. You see? You shouldn't be thinking of the place. You should be thinking of how your skills fit in those places with those people there. Okay? Now, third issue, you want to reconnoiter several possible places, that is, travel to visit and check it out, several places before deciding which one to go to. You don't want to get locked in with just one location. A lot of guys do this. A lot of guys who decide to be expats, they fix on one place, and it's just that place. And that's a mistake. Because see, by locking in to just that one place, they're blinding themselves to the possibility of other places that might be better for them. And they lock themselves and they never go to that place. They simply decide from afar, just from what they read on the internet, that that place is going to be nirvana for them. And so they go there, and then they get there and they're miserable because they've never been there. And once they are actually there, they realize that there are a whole host of things that they don't like about the place, but they're stuck. They spent a lot of money to get there, and they're not going to be able to leave, not without a lot of effort. They fall into the sunk cost fallacy that they've invested so much time and effort into the place that they keep on digging the hole. Yeah, but they're miserable. See, you don't want to do that. What you want to do is look at 3, 4, 5 places, even maybe even more, but figure out places and see them, visit them, and not for like a day. Spend 2, 3 weeks there if you can, to really figure it out. Figure out if it's the place for you, because it could be the place, and it could not. And it could be that one of the places that you thought was low on your priorities list is actually perfect for you. I talk a lot of times about this road trip I did back in 2000, 2001. I went around all of North America. I started in New York City, where I was living, and I drove up to Toronto, and then across Canada all the way to Yellowknife, and then across the Rocky Mountains, the Canadian Rockies, into Alaska to Fairbanks, then north all the way to Prudhoe Bay, and then south all the way to Anchorage. Took a ferry to Juneau, then another ferry from Juneau to Bellingham in Washington State, drove down the West Coast, Seattle, Portland, Northern California, Napa Valley, San Francisco, LA, Beverly Hills, crossed the Southwest, all the way to Texas, then the deep South, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and all the way back to New York City, the Carolinas, Virginia. I saw it all, right? And when I drove out, I thought that there'd be like, I thought the different places would be fantastic. I thought Toronto would be great. It was just, not very interesting. The place I really loved was Portland, Oregon. Nice people. This was 20 years ago, okay? So, I mean, I'm not speaking for it now, but back in 2000, lovely people. And I never would have thought it. I thought that Seattle was going to be really, really cool. The Seattle scene and all of that, Nirvana, coffee shops and all that. I thought that Seattle was going to be fantastic. And no, they were just snooty little stuck up bobos, bourgeois bohemians, yuppie scum, basically. Yuppie scum dressed up as alternatives. It was just not a nice city. I didn't like it at all. But Portland was really nice. Again, at the time. Portland was filled with these very down-to-earth people, very relaxed, easygoing, just mellow, easy to make friends there. I made a bunch of friends. People would just have me over, and total strangers. I met them at the dog park, and all of a sudden there I am hanging out at their place, smoking a little weed, chilling out, watching some TV, laughing at whatever, nice as can be, And Seattle, all stuck up and snooty, and on top of that, they fucking stole my video camera there, which really bugged me, but that's another story. Anyway, the point, I thought that Seattle would be great. I just had that fixed idea, but Portland was much better. You see? You want to go to multiple places, because the place you least expect it is where you're going to feel most comfortable. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Now, fourth is you got to learn the language. Knowing the basics, and you should know the basics of the language, be able to have like a very basic conversation in the language before you go. A lot of people decide, that they can wing it when they get there or whatnot, or that everybody's going to speak English. No, they're not all going to speak English. In fact, most of them don't. Okay, it's the rare country where they speak English. Okay, and a lot of people in foreign countries, they might speak English, but they don't want to. They're in their home country. Why should they adapt to you? You have to adapt to them, and they have a point. Okay, I mean, like in France, people rarely spoke to me in English. And I didn't really have a problem because I understood where they were coming from. It's their country. Yeah. Here in Holland, people are more easygoing about that kind of stuff, and they all speak to me in English. They also speak to me in English because they recognize that Dutch is exceedingly difficult to learn. Okay. It is a hard language. And so because of it, Dutch people are very relaxed about that. But in other countries, no, they don't take any shit, and they shouldn't. It's their country. You should adapt to them, not them to you. And in fact, if you force them to adapt to you, they'll resent you. Mm-hmm. And the people who will be talking to you, it's usually because they have some sort of ulterior motive. Something's fishy. If they suck up to you by speaking English to you in this foreign country, something's going on. Don't trust them. Okay? I mean, it could be very well that they're just being exceedingly friendly, but if they're not making the effort to teach you the language and talking to you exclusively in English, two possibilities. Either they are using you to improve their English, which is fine, or something fishy is going on. Okay, so you got to learn the language. That's definitely, and know the basics before you go there. Okay, and finally, the fifth thing. See, you're going to choose a place, right? Because it has certain geography, climate, this, that, the other. But you got to move for the place and the people. It's not just one. Okay, I mean, if it ever comes to a choice between the people and the place, always choose the people over the place. Okay. I mean, the place might be fantastic, but if the people are shit, you don't want to be there. You're going to be miserable because people are what matter, not the place. Okay? The place can be beautiful, but beauty fades. You get used to beauty very quickly. Whereas the people, well, they're forever. You see what I'm saying? I mean, I'm here in Amsterdam, and the people here are lovely. They're really nice people, very friendly and easygoing and relaxed. I don't even notice Amsterdam architecture anymore. I mean, it's just there, I just don't notice it. It's really beautiful. It really is spectacular. But, after a couple of months, you don't even notice it. It's just invisible because you're dealing with people. Okay? That's the key issue. Now, the next issue, we talked about why to go, where to go. Now the issue is when to go. See, I always think of Bitcoin. When everybody was talking about Bitcoin, it was too late to get into Bitcoin. The trade was over. Mm-hmm. You got to be, if you think that the place you are living today, say the United States in this case, is going to become very unpleasant for you in the near term future, okay, you have to be moving when it's still easy for you to do so. This ought to be obvious, but it's not. A lot of people wait and wait and wait, and they keep saying it'll get better, it'll get better, it'll get better. That's what led to a lot of the Jews getting, gassed in the ovens in 1942. They thought, oh, it'll get better. You just wait. We'll just wait a little bit. It'll get better. No. If you see the signs that looks like it's going to get worse, assume that it will. I mean, frankly, better safe than sorry. Think of it from this point of view. You're a Jew in Germany in 1938. You have the chance to flee, right? And you know that the winds of war are blowing, right? That something's going to come up pretty soon between Germany and France and Britain, right? So you got to ask yourself, well, do I stay? Maybe it'll get better. That's what a lot of people did. And what happened to those Jews who stayed? Well, they got gassed. That's what happened to them. See? The Germans, I mean, it wasn't like all of a sudden, everything was fine and everybody was singing Kumbaya and everybody was so happy. And then the next day, boom, they turned on the gas ovens and started gassing people. No, it was a slow process. Now, people tend to get used to stuff, no matter how unpleasant. That's why so many German Jews stayed in Germany until the bitter end, until they were killed. because they kept thinking that, oh, things will get better. Hmm? In my experience, when things start to get bad, there's usually an event, that sort of like triggers you and tells you, this is going bad. This is going to go real bad. In Germany, during the Nazi period, that event was Kristallnacht, uh, the night of broken glass, right? When Nazi stormtroopers allied to the government, remember, okay, these were essentially government troops. They went around smashing Jewish shops and destroying synagogues. That was the moment. That was the moment when it's time to go. You know, uh, simple as that. You gotta know that there's going to be a moment, a tipping point, a moment when it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And let's analyze that moment of Kristallnacht, right? I forget when it was. Let me check real quick while we're talking about this. Um, it was November. It was 1933, I believe. I'll check it while I'm talking to you. So, uh, Kristallnacht. Oh yeah, it was. Oh, November 9th, 1938. Okay, 1938. So for 5 years, the Nazis took power in 1932. For 6 years, the Nazis had been in control, and then finally in 1938, they just, Night of Broken Glass, also called the November Pogrom, was a pogrom against Jews carried out by SA paramilitary forces and civilians throughout Nazi Germany. And of course, the German authorities looked on without intervening. That was the moment. That was a tipping point. If I'd been just a regular Jew in Germany in 1938 after Kristallnacht, and I see that this had happened and the authorities had done nothing, I would have left. If I were living in Portland, Oregon today, and they burn my neighbor's business, and they are, Antifa scum are threatening people in their suburban house, I'd leave. Absolutely. And if it meant I took a total loss on my shop or my business, fine. But it's time to go because the authorities, what are they doing? They're not doing anything. They're letting it happen. And you can say, oh, well, it's just the election. Maybe it'll get better. Oh, well, maybe, sure, maybe not. I don't really want to be around to find out. You see the point? There comes a moment when you have to figure out, is it time to go? If the authorities are allowing something to happen and they're not really condemning it or stopping it, then know that it's going to get worse. Okay? If, like the Nazis in 1938, the Nazi authorities didn't do shit after this night of broken glass. 91 Jews were killed, or 91 people. I don't know if they were all Jewish. It doesn't matter. Let's assume that they were. That should have been the sign. If I'm a German Jew, that's the time to go. In Portland and Seattle, in these different cities controlled by Democrats, they destroy businesses. They attack people who are pro-Trump. They shoot some of them, and they go to their houses and with horns and drums and all the rest of it, make a loud racket and just intimidate the fuck out of those people living in their homes. Huh? What the fuck do you think is going to happen? You think it's going to get better or worse? I'm betting it's going to get worse. Maybe it'll get better for a while, but see, they already got a taste of it. They're going to want more. And maybe they're going to want more, and I'm going to be their meal. Do I want to be their meal? Fuck no. Okay? So that's my point. My point is, see, you got to know when it's time to go. And you got to go when it's still easy to go. Because in 1938, after the Kristallnacht, Jews in Germany could still leave. Perhaps not to the United States or England, but perhaps they would have to go someplace else and it would be more expensive, but they could still leave. See? You got to know when to go, and you got to realize that it's when the authority and the violent mob are basically on the same side. I mean, that's why a lot of people in the United States are thinking it's time to go. I mean, come on, quite frankly. If I'm living in a democratic city today, I'd be thinking seriously of leaving. It doesn't matter how peaceful it might be now, because later, who knows what'll happen? I mean, look what happened to Portland. Look what happened to Milwaukee. Look what happened in Kenosha. This shit is going to get really, really bad. And so, do I want to wait around and see how bad it gets? Do I want to wait around until it affects me? Fuck no. When you see that the authority and the force of chaos are on the same side, it's time to go. And you want to go when it's easy, when nobody else is really thinking about it, or maybe they're thinking about it, but not actually doing it. Okay? Because people, it takes a while for people to act. It takes them a while to really motivate to get going. Because of course, you put roots in whatever place you're living, and it's hard to pull away and cut those roots and walk away. It's hard. Of course it is. You got stuff, you got friends, you got family perhaps, you got a house of your own, you got all kinds of shit. But you got to realize that there comes a moment when it's impossible to leave, when all the escape doors have been closed. You got to leave before that happens. So you got to go when it's still easy, but there are signs that it's coming. Okay? Now, how to go? First of all, wherever you go to, you got to accept the foibles of where you're going. Okay? Don't fight them or complain about them and bitch and moan about them. You'll only make yourself miserable. See, that's a key thing. It's when I say how to go, it's a mentality issue. How you go is with an open mind, and you have to forgive the foibles of where you're going to and just accept them. Okay, whatsoever those foibles may be. Like for instance, a great place, a place that I highly recommend to flee the United States is Panama. Panama is a great place. People speak Spanish, but a lot of them speak English. Certainly everybody who works like for banks and lawyers and that kind of class of people, they all speak English, okay? They're used to dealing with Americans. They like Americans. It's out of the way, lovely weather. And yeah, but in Panama, you know, things take time, to put it mildly. You know, they say that they're gonna fix an elevator. Yeah, they'll fix it, but not today. Not tomorrow either. Well, maybe next week. It'll get fixed eventually. Just take a little time. Okay. Yeah, everything is a little bit, tranquilo, tranquilo. Take it easy, right? That's the foible of Panama. And it's a foible of a lot of Latin American countries. You just have to accept it. If you fight it, you're going to be miserable. Don't fight it. It's like fighting the tide. Understand? See, you're used to being on a beach on a lake. Lakes don't have tides. They don't have what you call waves, right? But the ocean, it does. You go to the ocean. You go to the Seychelles. It's beautiful ocean there, right? It's got some nasty riptides, yeah, and big waves that you got to be careful about, yeah, because there are rocks and shit, and the waves can toss you against those rocks. You're going to get hurt pretty badly, right? Don't complain about it. Understand that it's just the reality of the place. Accept it. That's a key thing, and it's a mentality that you have to carry, because so many expats, and I've met expats all of my life, by the way, because for different reasons we traveled around when I was growing up because of my dad's job. He was in finance and banking, and he just got assigned to different places. And one time we were living in Ecuador in 1978. I was 10 years old, and I remember being at some country club and some guy just going on and on and on about how upset he was at the Ecuadorians and how he hated it here and this and that. He just went on and on and on. And it was like, Jesus Christ, man, if you hate it so much, why the fuck are you here? I was 10 years old and I was thinking that. I mean, you got to understand that the place you're going to is not like back home where you grew up. They have different rules, different priorities, different foibles. You yourself have foibles and you don't even realize them, okay? But other people do, okay? So don't think that other people are fucked up and you're perfect. Okay, I just have to emphasize this because it's sad how unhappy so many expats are because they don't recognize this truism, that you have to accept where you're going and realize that you will not change them and they don't want to be changed, and that you have foibles that they're putting up with too, okay? You're not Mr. Perfect. That's the first thing. It's a mentality issue of how to go. Now, how to go in a practical sense, always travel light. And that's trademarked, by the way. That's, you have to pay me 5 cents every time you use that expression. Travel light, yes. A lot of people I mean, it's a natural thing. You collect stuff and you wind up wanting to carry it all because you want to replicate what you had back home in whatever new place you're going to. That's a mistake. That's a mistake. The thing that I found most sensible is to just sell everything. Sell everything because you don't need all that shit. You got furniture, you got TVs, you got video games, you got all kinds of crap. Hmm? You don't need it. You think you do. You think that you need it and you hold on to it and you don't want to let it go, but you don't really need it. Huh? You can give it up. You can sell it and get some cash. Cash is a hell of a lot more useful than some old sofa that weighs a ton and that, it's not even that comfortable, right? A lot of guys will hold on to the stupid sofa thinking that they need it. They don't. Get rid of everything. Get rid of everything. Travel light. Mhm. And that's insofar as your shit is concerned. You want to get rid of all your shit. You know, your 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 everything that you need two arms to carry. You want to get rid of it. Okay. You only want to carry when you travel the bare essentials, the bare necessities, because you can get shit wherever you're going. Okay. Whatever you have in one place, you can sell it where you are, and wherever you're going to, you can get it there, assuming you need it. More often than not, you'll find that you don't need it. Okay. Uh, and by the way, this issue of like holding on to shit and putting it in storage, I'm doing it now. As a matter of fact, I got like a whole storage room full of crap, right? And I started paying for this shit. Let me see, in mid 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, it's 4 years now, 4.5 years. Actually 5 years because I had to prepay the year. I spend roughly like $2,000 a year on that fucking thing, right? So I've spent 10 grand for a bunch of crap that's sitting in Chile in some storage facility that, I don't even miss it. You know what I miss? There's like a box of photographs, um, of like, going back 30 years. And there is a collection of mugs because I collect mugs from wherever I go, you know, and to drink my coffee. And I use a different mug every day because I'm anal that way. What do you want me to say? That's the only two things that I miss. All the other shit that I have in those storage, in that storage unit, don't miss it at all. But I'm paying, $2,000 a year for that shit. Yeah. So far, it's been 10 grand for nothing, you know? It's just money that I might as well have just burned up. Or better, I could have sold a lot of that shit and picked up maybe, I don't know, another 10 grand. So I'd be 20,000 ahead, the 10,000 I didn't spend on storage plus the 10,000 of selling all the shit that I have there. And that's like a fire sale, just getting rid of the shit. I would have picked up 10 grand without breaking a sweat, right? And I'd be 20,000 ahead right now. But no, I'm holding on to all that shit pointlessly, and I'm paying 2,000 a year every year. And right now, when am I going to be moving to Chile? I don't know, man. Probably never. Or ship all that crap over to wherever I happen to be. Who knows? I mean, like, you see my point. You don't need that shit. I mean, to tell you the truth, one of these days I'm going to fly out to Chile just to get rid of all that crap, because it's a lot of crap that I have to go through and see if it's important or not, or hold on to it or not, or whatever. But the fact is that, in 4 years, I don't even think about that shit, and every year I get the email saying that I have to pay up, and I'm like, fuck it. And I just do it real quick, to like when you get a needle on your ass, right, from the doctors. I try to get it over with as quickly as possible, but every fucking year it's 2 grand for nothing. You can sell it. You can get rid of it. You're not going to miss it. Okay. Carry only what you need. Like you have a suitcase, you have two suitcases, cut them in half. Okay. There's a great rule of thumb in traveling, right? Make two piles, a pile of your money and a pile of the stuff you absolutely need to take. Then double the money and have the stuff that you need to take, and you'll be fine. And that's true. It's dead true. Okay. Now, this is a key issue that a lot of guys fuck up with. Wherever you decide to move to, you got to have friends or at least good acquaintances there already, people that you already have a baseline relationship with before you move there permanently. Okay? Because you need some people, more than one, to sort of like introduce you around to other people and network and make more friends. You can't depend on one guy alone. You need more than one, and you need to have some sort of relationship with them before you move there. okay? Why do you need that before you move there? Because when you move, there's going to be a lot of chaos and you might need help dealing with shit that's happening during the move when you go there. You go someplace, excuse me, you decide to reconnoiter 5 places, for instance. And in those 5 places, make it a point to make friends there. And how do you make friends there? Well, ask all of your network of friends back home, wherever home is, ask them if they know anybody at the place you're going to. Say, for the sake of argument, we're just making a hypothetical here, that you're going to go check out London, Paris, Amsterdam, and Berlin, those 4 cities, okay? I'm making a hypothetical. And so before you go, ask around if you among your friends if any of them know anybody in London or Paris or Amsterdam or Berlin beforehand, and get in touch with those people in those 4 cities beforehand, okay? And say, hi, I'm a friend with so and so here in the States, and I'm going to be going there. I'm going to be staying for 3 weeks, and I was hoping that we could get together, to have like a drink, because I just want to check out about possibly moving to London. You don't mention that you're thinking about moving to the other 3 cities. With each of them, you just mentioned their city, right? And I'd really, love some help out if you don't mind, and I'd be happy to buy you a drink or buy you dinner, for your trouble or something like that. And 9 times out of 10, people will say, sure, let's get together. Oh, and don't worry, you don't have to buy me dinner, but just buy me a beer, and we're set. And you'll have a lovely conversation. You'll meet somebody. And if you cultivate that relationship with whatever random person will bring you to other relationships. And all of a sudden, you'll be on your way in that particular city. You see what I'm saying? So you do that when you do those reconnoiter trips. And then when you finally decide to move to one of the cities that you've decided on, cities or towns or whatever, or country, wherever it is that you decide to move, that person, you already have like a baseline friendship with them. And the fact that you're moving to where they are living, they will try to help you, because it'll be a very natural thing, because in a weird way, people are always trying to sell the place where they are living to other people, impress on other people what a great place it is that they're living in. This is a natural human thing. I think it's because when we are living in some place and someplace comes here, somebody comes to where we're living, we want to show them that this place is fantastic, that it's not missing out on anything, okay? It might not be as glamorous as New York and Paris and Milan, but it's got lots of stuff going for it, and it's going to be a natural desire on our part to show off our city, okay? And so if somebody moves to our city or our town or our country or wherever, we'll make that extra effort to help them out, especially initially. Now, of course, like in every human relationship, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to take advantage of people. That's just rude. But you'd be surprised how helpful most people will be, and they'll be very, very happy to help you in anything in the beginning. Okay, in the beginning, any emergency you might have, anything or any advice, they'll be happy to give it to you. Okay. Okay, so you want to have some friends or at least acquaintances there. Okay, and another issue is that if you decide to leave your home country, whatsoever that home country is, what you want to do is have your finances in order, in the sense that if you're leaving a country, leave it. That is, close all your financial accounts in that country. Because if you leave a country, say you leave the United States for some country in Africa, say, if you have financial affairs in the U.S., it might prove very difficult for you to continue them once you're in Africa or Tasmania or wherever the hell you decide to go. Because as a practical matter, you might have to sign things or close things or do things, and just by the fact of the distance, it'll be exceedingly hard. So you want to simplify all that shit. So you want to shut it all down and either establish your financial presence in the place you are going to, or even better, in a third country before leaving. Before leaving, if you're leaving from the United States, as in this case, in this hypothetical that we're discussing, see, you have your finances set up in some third country, because a lot of people do that, and it's very practical. It's very practical sometimes to set up your financial base in a third country where you don't live, but that is used to dealing with foreigners, okay? There are a lot of such countries. Switzerland is the most famous one, but also Luxembourg, um, Cyprus, Panama, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore. All these places are very used to dealing with expats, and they have the infrastructure so that you don't have to be there in order to take advantage of their financial system. Okay, you want to have that organized before you go. Now, if you are a U.S. citizen and you decide to resign your U.S. citizen, you should know a few things. Okay, number one, you can't take it back. No backsies. Okay, once you resign it, that's it. I do believe that there is a process that you can recover your U.S. citizenship, but you have to jump through all the hoops of any immigrant. You don't get any special treatment just because you happen to have been born an American citizen before. Once you resign it, getting it back, forget it. It's as hard as if you were born in Africa and want to emigrate to the U.S. Okay, it's harder actually. Okay, they make you jump through hoops. Okay. So you got to understand that first. And you can get it back as a practical matter, and the number of years you have to wait and all the rest of it, you can't. Okay. So if you decide to give up your U.S. citizenship, you better be goddamn sure, and you better have really good fucking reasons to do so. Okay. Number one. Number two, before you give up your U.S. citizenship, you better have a citizenship of some other country. See? Because if you don't have a citizenship of some country and you give up your U.S. citizenship, which you can, you will be stateless. You won't have a passport from any country. You won't be able to travel anywhere. And in fact, in the country that you are at, you will be at their mercy because you might have a residency card in that country where you're living at, but they can take that away whenever they want to because you're not a citizen. You're just a resident, a legal resident, you know? But they can make that illegal instantly. And once they do that, they can kick you out of the country and you have no place to go. You don't have any travel documents. Your life is a fucking nightmare, okay? I mean, that is a way to self-fuck up your life in a catastrophic way, okay? I mean, anybody who does that, who has no other citizenship except their U.S. citizenship and gives it up, he's a fool, okay? But look, there are lots of guys who are actually like that, who are dumb enough to do it, okay? I'm just saying it so that you know, don't do it, okay? Now, a lot of people say that that you give up your U.S. citizenship and you don't have to pay U.S. taxes anymore. That's not true. If you give up your U.S. citizenship, you have to file taxes with the IRS for 5 years. Now, do keep in mind, the IRS, the United States, has double taxation treaties with most countries in the world. I'm talking the vast majority of it. Okay, certainly every country that you ever heard of. The only ones it doesn't is like, you know, some pissant little nothing burger like in Micronesia or whatever the fuck, right? But all the countries in Europe, European Union, all the countries in Latin America, I mean, without exception, all of them in Latin America, Central America, of course, Canada, I mean, the whole fucking globe, right? Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Russia, it has double taxation treaties. And what are those? Oh, it's very simple. See, the IRS understands that if you're living, say, in the United Kingdom, you're going to pay taxes in the United Kingdom on the income that you make. I mean, say that you're living in London and you're working at some bank there, right? And you're making good money there, whatever it is. And so what you do is you have to pay taxes in the UK, okay? Now, at the same time, you file an income tax statement in the United Kingdom, but you also file your income tax return to the US IRS. But what you do is that you state all your income, and then you show the certificate that you paid your taxes in the UK. You actually have to include your UK income tax statement with your US income tax return. And you send them off. And what happens is that the IRS looks at it and says, oh yeah, this guy paid his taxes in the UK, and the taxes in the UK cover what would have been his tax bill in the US. So approved, no problem. You see, that's a double taxation treaty. Now, so if you're living in the UK, say that you're living in the United Kingdom, in England, right? And you get British citizenship. I don't know how, you know, you get it somehow, you marry some English girl and, you know, that's how you expedite the process or something like that. You get your British passport and you decide, you know, I don't want to be a US citizen anymore for whatever reason. Then you resign your US citizenship and you still have to file income tax statements with the IRS for 5 years. And there are penalties, by the way. Monetary penalties, I think you can go to prison even, right? but you have to file them for 5 years. And at the end, after that, you're home free. You don't have any obligation. Now, US citizens have to file with the IRS regardless of where they are living. The United States and Eritrea are the only two countries in the world that have global taxation for its citizenship, for its citizenry rather, which most people think is grossly unfair, because it is, okay? But the double taxation treaty kind of like allays this, because a US citizen is not paying twice the income tax on his income. That's a lie, okay? If he's paying his taxes in the country of residence, like in the UK, for instance, like I was explaining, he just has to show that he's paying those taxes and that those taxes exceed his tax bill in the US, okay? Now, suppose he's living in a country that has very low income taxes, okay? Then suppose, just for the sake of argument, that if you had been earning the same income in the US, just federal taxes, of course, if you're living outside of the US, you don't pay state taxes, it's only federal taxes. Suppose if he had been in the United States, he would have paid, just say for the sake of argument, he would have paid, say, $30,000 a year in taxes. But the place he's living in, he's only paying $5,000 a year in taxes. Well, that difference, the $25,000, he has to pay that. Pay it to the IRS, you see? That's global taxation. The amount of taxation that you pay in the country of residence outside of the United States is taxes that are discounted from your tax bill in the US. But if the money that you pay in the country of residence outside the US is less than what you would have owed in the US, you have to make up the difference with the IRS, you see? And if what you pay in the foreign country is more than what you would have paid in the US, well, tough luck, buddy. That's, some folks are lucky and some ain't. Yeah. In fact, in the UK, for instance, you pay a higher rate of taxes than in the US. And so if you file taxes while living in the UK, you wind up, you wind up paying a lot more taxes to the UK government, and you don't get any kind of credit with the IRS. See, so yeah, sucks to be you in that case. You see what I mean? So anyway, yeah, that's a quick overview of how double taxation works. Okay, ultimately, you are going to pay either what you would have owed the IRS anyway, or more if the country where you're living in has higher income tax rates. Okay. Now, yeah, and you have to keep on filing for 5 years after you resign your citizenship, and then you're home free insofar as the tax situation is concerned. And by the way, I didn't note this, but if you decide to resign your citizenship, I believe, I could be wrong, but it's easy to check, but I believe that you can only go to the United States for 60 days in any 12-month period, okay? Unless it's work related. If it's work related, you can stay longer, but you have to pay US taxes, I think, okay? You'd have to check that. I mean, frankly, this is just an overview. If you're really interested in doing that kind of resigning your citizenship thing, then you should consult a lawyer and look really good and carefully into the whole situation, because there are a whole host of ramifications, okay? So anyway, this is a basic overview. I usually have a single slide for everything. And I have a second slide, but in this opportunity, because there are some things that people have asked me. A lot of my listeners are in other countries and they want to go to the United States. And I'm going to address those people right now. I just want to finish off this issue of leaving the United States, okay? Now, if you want to leave the United States, you better be goddamn sure that it's for the right reasons, okay? I mean, a really good reason is, for instance, you just want to live in another country and experience what that would be like. That's a great reason. Yeah, knowledge and experience. I'm A-okay with that. Totally behind that. Okay. The idea of moving to a foreign country should be something that you take very, very seriously, and don't jump into it, and study where you are going to go to. Study it carefully. And have options. Don't lock yourself into one place. Because if you go to one place, you have only this fixed idea of just this one place will make you happy, and you get there and you're not ecstatically happy instantly, you're going to be so disappointed. And the fact is, you can never be ecstatically happy in any place you go to. It takes a while to become happy. It takes a while and a lot of effort, quite frankly. And so you have to understand that wherever you go to, what you're looking for is the best chance of finding that happiness. And remember, you only find happiness with other people. You don't find happiness in a place, with things, with objects. It's with other people. And you got to keep that really firmly in mind. A lot of expats, they don't realize that. A lot of people who want to move, they think irrationally. Okay? Don't be irrational. Be very conscious of the decision you're making, and go proactively, not reactively. Remember the metaphor of the lion chasing you, right? Don't run, without any thought, just running at random, scared, panicked. Go to a flagpole. That's what you want to do. Okay? Okay, that's for my US listeners, if you will. Now, insofar as my foreign listeners, why do people want to move to the United States? Well, most people want to move to the United States because they think that America is nirvana. It's not. And making a living, making a life, building a life in the United States is as difficult as any place else. So many people in the Middle East, in Africa, in Europe, even in South America, Central America, they think that they're going to go to the United States and it's going to be like the cities are paved in gold and it's just going to be fantastic. They think it's going to be like the movies. They don't realize that, see, what the movies portray is the way upscale people with a lot of money live in the United States. It's not normal. If you've ever watched like a John Hughes movie, like in the 80s, right? Yeah, of course they're from the 80s, but see, everything that you see in a John Hughes movie, that's normal for rich people. It's not everyday people. It's upscale people. And people in the United States recognize this automatically. They don't think about it. They know that what they're seeing is a fantasy. But people outside the United States think it's real. It's not. I mean, they even think that the sordid parts of the United States are sexy and cool because it's just the fucking movies, yeah? Because people get their impressions of the United States based on movies, and the movies are telling a lie. Life in the United States is very hard. It's very difficult, especially if you're poor and if your accreditation for the education you have is not recognized in the United States, which happens so many times. People who are real doctors and very capable doctors, very competent doctors in some other country, and the US doesn't recognize their medical degree, so they have to do a medical school all over again. And they ace it, sure, but it's like 4 years that they waste and all that mountain of debt to pay for this medical school. And they're doctors already, but I mean, life is not easy in the United States, but people think it is, see? And so they jump through hoops, they get to the United States, and they realize it's not nirvana. They realize it's really kind of miserable, and they're bitter. They're really bitter. And frankly, I've noticed that a lot of immigrants who arrive in the United States, they never achieve the material well-being that they had in their old country. Because in terms of like dollar amount, they might have more in the United States. But in terms of actual assets, they might have more in their own country. And there's another thing too. People move to the United States thinking that they will have more economic opportunities. That is debatable, very debatable. But one thing that is true is that those people don't understand what they will lose once they leave their home countries. And what I'm talking about is human connections. If you're a foreigner in the United States, people are very friendly. They're very kind. But they are not your family. They are people that you might not know very well or more than a superficial sense, okay? A lot of that close community feeling that you had in your old country, you're not going to have it in the United States, and you will never get it back in the United States. A lot of people from, especially Latin American countries, because I understand the experience, they move to the United States and they feel so alone and depressed because they don't have their aunts, their uncles, their cousins, their grandparents, and all those other people around. all those other people who are around in their lives all the time. They're in the United States and they're on their own. And they meet their friends that they made in the United States, and the people in the United States are exceedingly friendly. They're far more friendly than most any other country. They're far more friendly to strangers than most any other country. But that friendliness to strangers is because everybody in the United States is exceptionally alone. That's a dirty little secret. People in the United States are lonely and isolated. And so when they meet somebody, they're friendly to them because many times it's the only person they've been able to talk to in God knows how long. Yeah. People in America, people's social circle is exceptionally small. Mm-hmm. Unlike in a lot of countries outside the United States. And like I can speak with some authority in Central America and South America, that's the case. In Africa, in Middle East, the same. A lot of Arabs that I've met, I talk to them, and they are very unhappy in the West because they didn't realize rather, what they had in their old country in the Middle East, that once they got to the West, they lost that human connection to their community and a wide extended family network. You got to keep in mind that you're going to lose that. The attractiveness of the United States is a lot of times that it seems novel and new and golden, but it's a mirage. The fact that a lot of Americans want to leave it, the fact that some Americans are listening to it now and taking notes, very detailed notes, and thinking very seriously about leaving the United States should prove that, okay? So if you're not from the United States, you got to understand that America is not a nirvana, okay? And you might have more economic opportunities, maybe, okay? If your economic opportunities depend on accreditation and being an employee, no, you're fucked. It's as simple as that. If you're a foreigner and you've got a good degree from your university in your country and your job is such that you can only work as an employee, I don't know in what profession, I mean, let's say engineer, or say doctor, like I was telling before, right? Then you're fucked. People who are entrepreneurs, who are self-starters and start their own business, yeah, they have a better chance, a better shot at success in the United States because the barriers to setting up a business in the United States are lower than in a lot of other countries. Not every other country. There are some countries that it's even easier than America to set up a new business. For instance, Hong Kong, Singapore, Macau. Yeah, it's easier. Mm-hmm. Hell, in Chile, it's actually easier. I've set up businesses both in the United States and in Chile, and I can tell you that in Chile, it's faster. In Chile, I set up a corporation in a day. And getting everything squared away with the accountants and all the rest of it and the legal affairs and whatnot, it took me not more than a week. Okay, yeah, and it took me a little bit longer than in the States. So yeah, some countries it's actually faster and easier. Okay, so don't swallow the mirage of America. It's because of Hollywood, but it's not real. Okay. Okay, so there's my presentation on this particular topic. I hope you've enjoyed it. And now let's go for questions. Let me see. Oh, let me see here. Hang on. Oh, shit. I forgot to do the second slide. I mean, I forgot to transition to it. It was a short slide. Let me just show it to you. There it is. It just had basically the items I just enumerated for those who are foreign. Okay. But let me go to the previous slide because I want to keep that on screen while we're talking. Wait, I'll go back to the final screen. This one here. Take a quick screenshot of it. I'll change back to the other one. 1, 2. When I count to 5, I'll switch to the other one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh shit. Oh man. Hang on. I fucked it up with the fucking slideshow. Hang on. There we go. And there we go. Okay, so we're all set, and let me just pause it there and go to questions. Okay, so now's the time for you guys to write out your questions, and I'll try to get to them as many as I can. Don't say you have a question about moving from the US. Tell me what the question is, or else I can't help you. Okay, Philippe says he doesn't have a mic, so he has a question. What are your thoughts on Western countries in Europe? My thoughts on Western countries in Europe is that it's overly bureaucratized, and everybody in Western Europe feels like sheep. Uh, I I've lived in France. I've lived in I lived in Paris. I've lived in London, and now in Amsterdam. Within the last decade, I lived in Paris in 2011 and 2012, and in London in 2017 and 18, and now in Amsterdam in late 2019 and 2020. And I can say that they're beautiful cities. The Western European countries are great, but they're sheeple, and they do whatever the leadership tells them to do. They don't understand. They don't have any kind of self-determination. They're also extremely closed. Mhm. It's very, very difficult for a stranger to make his way in these countries, to be accepted and to be included. Okay, and so it's not something that I particularly care for. Mhm. I also think that European countries are on a suicidal trajectory insofar as their immigration is concerned, and just the whole vibe, immigration, the economy, the unification of Europe, it's sliding into totalitarianism. Hmm? I personally don't. It's great to visit, but not to live here. You know, I mean, because I feel that I'm just touristing, long-term touristing, but touristing. Okay, I've had a great time in Amsterdam, but having lived a little over a year here, I don't think I'd like to stay here. Mhm. Yeah, because people are very closed. Yeah, they're friendly, very friendly, but closed, and that's the way it is. Um, Let me see. Konstantin Kuklis. Let me bring him on. Oops. What the hell? Hang on a second. Hang on. Konstantin Kuklis. Hello, Konstantin. Are you there? Hello. Hello. Oh, he has two. Let's see if the
Yeah,
other one is.
hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, I'm fine.
So you have a question. So why don't
Hey.
you tell us?
So I'm like 22-year-old guy from Lithuania. It is like in Eastern Europe, and I'm
Hmm.
thinking of going to study in an Ivy League. It is for computer science, and I need to have a degree. So in your video, do not go to college part 2, you said if you will go to college, go to the best schools there is available for the connections.
Well, no. I didn't say that. I said you should go to the cheapest college, because it's just an
Mhm.
accreditation.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to get any contacts. I mean, I went to an Ivy League school,
Mhm.
and I didn't get any contacts. That's just bullshit. But what is good is that, see, if you go to an Ivy League school with a name brand recognition,
Mhm.
then people take you automatically more seriously. Okay, I assume that you're getting a master's in science and computer science.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, then sure. And also in the graduate programs, there might be an issue. There might be more of an issue insofar as quote connections insofar as getting a good job later. There might be that.
Mhm.
Okay. I wouldn't know insofar as computer science, but I would guess so, especially if it's like a really prestigious program like at Stanford.
Mhm.
Stanford is not an Ivy League. It's just Stanford. The Ivy League is just the 8 universities in the Northeast. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you got to figure it out.
But is it worth going then considering that the future is going like that way, this way, like communism and censorship and that?
Well,
I
see,
don't
it's
know.
it's different for you because you're foreign. You're Lithuanian. So for
Mm-hmm.
you, you go to the U.S., get your degree, maybe work a couple of years, and you can
Mm-hmm.
go back to Lithuania. Your family's still there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for you, it's a different story because you can leave whenever you want to. And you'll miss the United States because maybe you went to university and had a good experience and you had a nice job at whatever company, right?
Mm-hmm.
But shit got heavy in the States, and so you left, which is easy because you're a foreigner and you've got a Lithuanian passport, and so you just slip back out of the United States and back to Lithuania with this great experience that you had of like 4 or 5 years in the US, and then you tell your friends in Lithuania, yeah, I lived in the United States and it was great. I went to university and worked for a couple of years, but then the political situation got so bad that I had to leave. End of story. You're perfectly fine. See, it's not that big of a deal for you as a foreigner. The problem, the big deal, is for people who are American and see it becoming a shithole. See, that's the issue.
So I'm lucky.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, count your blessings, Konstantin. Great to have had you on, man. I hope you continue watching.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Seamus said, for fuck's sake. Let me see what Seamus had in mind. My thoughts on Ireland. Well, I can't read up a link. I don't know what you want, Seamus. Oh, this is an interesting question. Yeah, Seamus has another question, which is pretty good. Let me bring him on. Seamus, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you had a great question about Belarus. Hit me.
Yes. Basically, for people that don't know what's going on in Belarus, there was an attempted color revolution against the guy that's been in power for about 26 years, Lukashenko. So this lady, she was the wife of a guy that was put in jail, Chikanovskaya, I think her name is.
Yeah, it's not important. What's the bullet point?
Is Lukashenko going to stay on in power? Then you'll have to make a decision. Are they going to join Russia, or will the other crowd take over?
Yeah. I'm going to have to mute you because I'm hearing myself really badly because you're not wearing earphones. Yeah, if you have a question, please put on earphones for everybody. But anyway, Seamus, let me answer your question, then I'll bring you back on. I've been thinking about Belarus, the Belarusian situation, very carefully. See, Belarus has always been either Russian or a borderland of Russia, like a buffer zone between Russia and the West, and Poland specifically. Now, Belarus has had a very close relationship with Russia ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union, and Putin has had no problems whatsoever. It's clearly a color revolution that is being financed and encouraged by the West. I think at some point, my suspicion, at some point, the Russians are simply going to put tanks in Belarus under the control of nominal control of Lukashenko, and they're just going to take it over and crush out any kind of serious opposition, because they do not want Belarus to ever become a member of NATO or the European Union. They will not allow that, okay? Because Russia recognizes that the European wants to destroy Russia. Ultimately, that's their ultimate goal, and that's their goal. And to pretend otherwise is being blind. Everything that the West has done over the last 30 years, it's been to the detriment of Russia, or trying to undermine Russia, not merely the people who are in power in Russia, but to undermine the Russian people, to stamp them out. I have a suspicion as to why this is so, but it's a suspicion that, quite frankly, would get me into so much trouble that I'm not going to air it. I'm sorry. But I suspect that a group of people in the West have an ancestral hatred of Russia that is so profound that they have maneuvered and manipulated the political powers in the West, and just have them convinced that Russia is the boogeyman and that all Russians are evil and must be stamped out. And I think that this is part of that overall vibe. See, let me pull you back on, Seamus. I hope you have earphones on, man, because I get like really bad echo. Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. What's up?
Great. Yeah, that's a really good answer. I think, but the problem is Lukashenko. He was kind of courting the West and courting Russia at the same time. So he should have made up his mind years ago.
Yeah, he's fucking idiot.
It's his own fault, all this trouble that he brought on himself.
Yeah, how's the situation in Ireland? I take it you're in Ireland, right?
I sent a link on there. I didn't even, it was just, they've already started with this Joe Biden is Irish bullshit,
Well, he
Oh,
probably is. I mean, Biden, isn't Biden an Irish name? I don't know. I mean,
oh
I
yeah.
don't
And
care.
today is International Intersex Solidarity Day, and I don't even want to understand what the hell that crap is.
You
And they're lighting up.
transphobe. You transphobe. I
Oh my
should
God!
tip you off. You're a transphobe.
I'm supposed to light up my house in the color of purple.
Yeah, fuck yeah, you should. Yeah, and hey, don't talk to me about he. I'm them. I'm
Right.
they. What
So
bullshit.
you said before you didn't want your children being brought up in that kind of atmosphere.
No.
That'd be my main reason to move to Eastern Europe.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
fuck no. No, and
number
also in
one
Latin
reason.
America, they don't put up with any of this shit. They think it's stupid.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Look, poorer countries think that this is bullshit. Okay.
yeah.
Because in poorer countries where the state is not the substitute man in women's lives, where a woman has
Yes.
to go out and get a man to support her, they realize that this is all bullshit. Okay. But in the West, man, they are selling this shit of trannies and all the rest of it to small children. They are convincing some of these children to get themselves castrated. This fucking evil, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's flat
Yeah,
out evil. No
yeah.
other. It's evil.
No,
Look,
no discussion. Like that's
yeah,
it.
because we recognize that children, young people, they don't have any discernment because they're
Yeah.
children. They're learning. Okay, we
And
don't let.
it's been proven that your brain develops
Yeah,
at age 25.
yeah.
25.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we don't let anybody under the age of 18 to buy a gun or buy a drink, right? Well,
Yeah,
maybe in Ireland they let you have drinks supervised, which I think is a healthy approach. But
yeah,
in most countries, nobody has a problem with prohibiting children from drinking and voting and buying a gun. But
yeah,
they have the wherewithal to determine that, oh no, I'm not really a boy, I'm a girl. My son is 5 years old, right?
yeah,
For like the past like year or so, he goes on and on and on explaining that he is not a boy. He's either a kitten or a transformer. He can't make up his mind, right?
or an
Sometimes he
astronaut.
decides no, he hasn't gotten to the astronaut phase yet.
Right.
Because there hasn't been that much stuff about astronauts in the news. When I was his age, I was an astronaut, absolutely, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's 5, and his
yeah,
mother and I just like find it adorable, right? And of course, ignore it. Okay. I'd never dream of taking him to the fucking hospital and having his arms and legs chopped off and replaced with like robot arms and legs just because he claims to be a fucking transformer. Of course, I wouldn't do such a thing. That would be insane. Okay.
it's the people that facilitate it as well. They should be just, I don't know what to do with them.
Well, yeah. So we're kind of like stuck with them, and that's the problem. Okay. Look, uh, we have lost moral self-confidence, the
Yeah,
ability to say this is good and this is bad,
yeah,
this is right and this is wrong. We're so worried about not being perceived as judgmental that we've lost this basic notion of being able to say to tell the difference between good and bad, and this is obviously bad. And well. So look, it's going to get worse, a hell of a
yeah,
lot worse before it gets better. And the tragedy is that all these people who are mutilated, who will be castrated, or girls who will, suffer radical mastectomies and whatnot in their efforts to become more like boys, in 20, 30 years, it's all going to be revealed to have been this horror story, right? But I mean, we
yeah,
already know it now, but they're covering it up. And some of the people are revealing it and saying, this was the worst thing I ever did. I never should have done it. And, it's too late and the damage is done. Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, Seamus, how's Ireland? I mean, is Ireland getting as nutty as it seems? From the outside, it looks pretty bad, actually.
Ireland, they're doing their best to become as much like a hybrid of Canada and Sweden as fast as possible.
And
That's
they're
how fucked
bringing
up it
in
is.
migrants like there's no tomorrow. What the fuck
Oh
is that all
yeah,
about?
yeah. That's just the cheap labor thing. Cheap labor.
Cheap
You see,
labor.
it's really weird because the welfare is really, really good here as well. So I think it's to, so the employers always have a nice steady supply of cheap labor all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured. By the way, I'm checking here that you have a question as to recommend a good book on Chile, Life Under
Yeah,
Pinochet. Unfortunately, there's no such book right now.
right.
Not that I've heard of, unfortunately. but
A
good
book you
times
could
were
write.
good.
A book you could write.
Me? No,
Yeah.
I'm not going to write a book about Chile, to tell you the truth. I have
Oh,
issues with Chile, but
okay.
no, like retrospectively, it was pretty good. Yeah, it was the good old days. Anyway, Seamus, great talking to you. Hope to catch you
Yeah.
next week, man.
Thanks. Likewise.
Bye. Mickey Turner has, I want to get to Mickey. Mickey is thinking of moving to Kharkov, where I live in Ukraine. Hey, Mickey, how's it going? You there? Hello? Mickey? Mickey, I don't see his microphone turning green, so let me read his question. Mickey says that he wants to move to Kharkov, which is in Ukraine. It's in eastern Ukraine. It's near the border with Russia. And I'll explain why I'm comfortable living there in just a minute, but I want to read his question first. Mickey says, by the way, I picked Kharkov, Ukraine, he says, because one, the lower cost of living compared to Dallas, Texas. Yes, it's exceptionally cheap. In Kharkov, with say a couple of thousand a month, you live like a king. I mean, really, I'm not kidding around. You live exceptionally well. You can rent a 100 square meter, 1,000 square foot apartment, with all modern conveniences, flat screen TV for $1,000. Expenses, heat, electricity, internet, a couple $100, and food, not more than 500, roughly less than $100 a week. Yeah, it's exceptionally cheap. You can live very, very well in Kharkov. So that's a good reason. Number two, it is a university town with hang on, I got new glasses, so which is fine because I am a bit of an intellectual. Good on you. I also like Russians, and are you there, Mickey? Hey, Mickey, how's it going?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. What's up?
Oh, wow. I can't believe I got it to work. Okay, great. Yeah,
We
I'm a bit
met
of an
in New
intellectual.
York, didn't we?
Yes, we did, briefly.
Yeah. And we did that New York get together. Yeah, I'm so glad that you're on, man. It's good to hear from you.
We keep finally running into each other. Great. Okay. I don't know what questions to ask. So why don't you just give me the lowdown? How do I find people to socialize there with? You know what I mean? In advance? You know what I mean?
Well, that's a good question. I think that you should do the following. You should check out the Russian language classes in Kharkov, which exist. There are many. And see, you kill two birds with one stone, because you take a Russian language class in Kharkov and you'll meet your Russian teachers and other people who are living in Kharkov. You'll meet them there and you'll pick up some Russian along the way. And so I would think that that would be a great first step,
Yes, I am planning on doing a volunteer visa, but I am planning on doing student. I understand there's a student visa, but I'm not sure if I can quote unquote get
I have no idea about visas.
enrolled in classes. I can be there
I'm not
permanently
getting
on a volunteer visa.
Yeah,
I've
that
already
I don't know. But the visa situation, residency stuff, that I don't know. But I can tell you that if you need to, in Kharkov in particular, it's a provincial city, so you need to know Russian, because very, very few people, if any, know English, not on the street. Okay, so you need to be able to speak a little bit of Russian.
I
Okay.
got a Russian app on my phone now. I'm trying to learn, but please don't embarrass me by start speaking
No,
Russian.
I don't know any Russian. But the thing is, like any language, it's just repetition. It's just the hours that you put into it, and you have to put in a lot of hours. Okay, I mean, no fooling around. But Kharkov,
That's
yeah,
fine.
Kharkov
I'm
is
looking
great. A
forward
lot of
to it.
people ask about, and I'll just say this real quick. A lot of people ask about the issue of Kharkov so near Russia. I think that that's actually a beneficial issue, because see, if there's ever a war between Russia and the West, and say Ukraine is a battleground. Now, if you look at a map of Ukraine, it's right down the middle of the country is the Dnieper River. Okay, it's D-N-I-E-P-E-R, but it's pronounced Dnieper. And the Dnieper River basically splits the country in two, and it's a natural border, and it's an exceedingly wide river. It's much wider than the Mississippi. You look at it in the map and it just seems like a river, but you start like put the little scale of kilometers right next to it, and you realize that at its widest point, it's something like 50 kilometers wide. No, 40 kilometers wide, something like that. It's really like a lot.
40
Okay?
kilometers, that's 24 miles.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's closer to a lake than a river. And so it's a natural border. And so if the Russians were ever to invade Ukraine, which they don't have any intention, but if they decided that they had to invade it in order to form a bulwark against a Western advance, they'd take over all of the eastern half of Ukraine very quickly because it's just flat terrain. There are no hills. That's the problem. That's always been the problem of Russian geography. See, between the Ural Mountains that are, to the east of Moscow, all the way to
Germany.
the Oder-Neisse line, it's flat. It's just flat. Okay, there's no natural boundary. That's
Yeah.
why, for instance, Poland has been a parallelogram that keeps on shifting over the centuries. You look at where Poland has been over the centuries, and it keeps moving around because there is no natural border. See, in Chile has this very odd shape. It's like this long little thing, between the Pacific on the one hand, but see, to the east of it is the Andes Mountains. And
Sort of
the
looks
Andes
like
are
a
really
saxophone or
impassable,
something like that.
okay? Geography determines the shape of Chile, but in Eastern Europe, it's all flat. It's as flat as the Great Plains. And so there's no natural boundary. And so the Dnieper River is a natural boundary between Russia and the West. And so they take over Eastern Ukraine if there was a war to break out. And therefore, Kharkov would be way behind the battle lines. So it would be very safe, very secure. It would be a captured city by the Russians, but most people in Kharkov are ethnically Russian. Most people, let me phrase it, all people in Kharkov speak Russian. Some speak Ukrainian, but most all of them speak Russian, and most of them are ethnic Russian. It's only to the west that they are more self-consciously Ukrainian and speak Ukrainian on a daily basis. But in East, it's Russian all the way. And so that's
Which is
why
fine
you
with
should
me.
learn Russian. What?
I'm a direct descendant of Vladimir the Great or whatever. Anyway, I figured that'd be a good talking
Vlad
point.
the Impaler. Yeah. So,
Vladimir the Great,
yeah.
whatever.
I don't know. But the point is, see, the issue of moving to the West, moving to Eastern Europe, you got to make sure that you're going there for the right reasons, that there's something there that's drawing you, okay? And not just going there because you think it'd be a great place, okay? And so you should try to develop like human assets in that place that would draw you to that, okay? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So anyway, Mickey, it was great talking to you, man. I hope to see you next
Thank you
week.
so much. Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you so much.
Have a blessed day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Take care. Let me see. Chris O. I haven't heard from Chris O in a while. So we're going to hit up Chris O. Chris O, how are you?
Hi, Coach. I'm well. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Have you been?
Well, given the last 48 hours, not so much. I share your sentiments regarding the election procedures and results.
So much bullshit. So much complete bullshit. Complete and utter bullshit. Yeah. And the media is claiming that they have the right to determine who's the winner of the election. That's pretty funny. I thought it was the secretaries of state who had to verify the vote, and then the electoral college had to actually vote, and that determined the president. And I thought that the courts could make injunctions and determine that certain elections were not valid. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I thought. But I didn't know that the New York Times could just say, "Hey, Joe Biden's president." I didn't know that, man. If I'd known that, I would have gone into journalism school. What the fuck? Yeah, didn't know that journalists had that kind of political pull, Anyway, what's on your mind, man?
Well, before I get to this question, I was listening to your webinar, the cast during the elections, and then one issue, I was hoping you would answer one issue around that, how to deal with, pro-Biden supporters now. I mean, they clearly believe that they've won. They're joyous. And even some of my friends are in that camp, and I'm having difficulty connecting to them right now. I mean, I don't want to just straight out voice the concerns that you're discussing. I don't want to question that because that might have a big, backlash, especially now that they believe that they've won. So, what do you suggest? Keep your mouth shut, just ignoring the issue,
Well, my
congratulating
thinking
them?
has always been that it's smarter to keep your mouth shut. Now, I've come to that realization because I have a big mouth, and I would have no trouble alienating a lot of people by saying, no, the election is bullshit. It was bogus. He clearly won. He won. The Republican Party won. What is it? 8 more representatives and at least 1 more senator. No way did Trump lose the election. No way. It doesn't make any sense. And all of this stuff of delaying the count, that's typical of what African democracies do when they have crooked elections. And you don't have to take my word for it. Look at the BBC. The BBC, and I posted on my Gonzalo Lira channel, like one of those quickie videos. The BBC back in 2012 posted an article saying how to spot election rigging. And it basically enumerates everything that's been going on in the United States. They were referring to election rigging in an African country, in Gabon, but the same applies to the United States, man. It was a rigged election. We know it is. Why are we fooling ourselves? But, these people, they have such a thirst to win no matter what, no matter how much they destroy their own democracy. So, yeah.
They have destroyed the democracy, and
They don't believe.
any
They don't believe.
discussion of democratic principles right now, it's hypocritical to say the least.
Yeah.
Given your expertise in finances, I mean, once
I'm not an expert. I know a few things about finance, but I'm no expert. But go ahead.
Speaking of the issue about leaving the U.S. or the West, because I'm in Canada, and I understand your view about Canada. Let's say we get there and we're successful. We're making money, piles of money, or literally speaking, money in piles, because other than their financial system's not working, or the business that we're doing just might give you cash. How do you transfer quite a lot of money out of third world countries, be them in Africa?
Well, it's not as complicated as you think. Okay. The way you do it is it's not as complicated as you think. It's not as dangerous as you might think. Okay, you're going to be thinking, oh, the possibility of theft and blah blah. It's not usually common. Okay. What you have to do is you have to be working with reputable lawyers. You always want to hire the best lawyers in any country, and through them, they will recommend which are the right accountants and the right banks. The key issue is that you never, ever, ever hand over power of attorney to anyone. Okay? I mean, that's the key issue. That's where a lot of people get into trouble. They hand over the power of attorney to somebody else, somebody that they might not really know that well, might not know and might not trust, or might not know that if they're trustworthy or not. And that's where they get into trouble. Okay? But see, that's why when you operate in like a third world country, like a dodgy country, like say someplace in Africa, right? What you want to do is that if you were in Africa, the smart thing would be to set up your financial base would be Cyprus. Cyprus, because it's roughly in the same time zone, okay? And so in Cyprus, you have your bank, you're banking in Cyprus. And you have an attorney in Cyprus who has set up some shell corporation for you in Cyprus. And what you do is that any kind of income that you bring in from your African venture, you quickly send it off to Cyprus, to your bank account in Cyprus, to the corporation. You're going to have to structure this. However you structure it, like for instance, this is real hypothetical and real easy. Suppose that you're set up in Niger, okay? So you set up a company in Niger that is doing whatever, okay? Now, whatever the company in Niger is doing, you want it to be paying a company that you control in Cyprus. You want it to be paying like some sort of royalty or some sort of franchise commission or something like that. Something that would explain a transfer of funds from the company in Niger to the company in Cyprus. And that way, see, whatever operation you're doing in Niger, it's an ongoing operation, but the money is flowing constantly to Cyprus. So if the situation in Niger goes tits up, like say, you know, they screw you out of money or something like that, or they somehow they fuck it up, some other force in Niger fucks it up, well, most of the cash has already been siphoned off to Cyprus. So the losses that you have in Niger are going to be negligible. It's not going to be the whole pie. Say for example, that you set up some business in Niger, and it produces a goodly income every month, and you're there for 24 months. And on the 24th month, excuse me, the government like nationalizes whatever business you had. If you had left all of your cash in Niger during those 24 months, then you lost it all. But if during the 23 preceding months, every month at the beginning of the month, you sent off your earnings to Cyprus, then you only lost 1 month, the last month. And those other 23 months, well, it's nice and safe in Cyprus. You see?
Okay.
These financial centers around the world, and to go geographically, it's in Cyprus, in London to a certain extent, if you know how to structure it in terms of creating a corporation that isn't taxed very heavily or at all in the UK, which is possible. In setting up a company in, say, Delaware, in Panama, and Delaware is the best place in the United States. Delaware is, the United States is one of the best places in the world to launder money. And this is known, by the way. Delaware is where it's at to launder money. Yeah, they keep complaining about other countries. The United States keeps complaining about other countries, but Delaware is the #1 money laundering center in the world, just so that you know. Then there's going west, there's Hong Kong, there's Singapore, Macau to a certain extent. And by the way, a lot of people talk about like the small islands in the Caribbean. They're all kind of a little bit dodgy. I really wouldn't do business there, but that's me. And the British Virgin Islands, the anonymity is gone. You have to, the end user has to be known. And so therefore the whole reason to have any kind of British Virgin Island company is gone. See, first they got rid of the bearer bonds in the British Virgin Island, which was the certificate that allowed you to transfer ownership of the company by handing over the piece of paper to whoever had it. And it was an easy way to transfer funds like inheritance or business transactions or whatever, but they eliminated the bearer bonds, and then they eliminated the nominee shareholders. And so now the end user beneficiary is the one who has to be declared for British Virgin Island companies. And therefore, the whole utility of having a British Virgin Island company is gone. And that's happened to most of the Caribbean countries that had these corporations, and therefore the utility of it is gone. But it still exists to an extent in Hong Kong and Singapore, and I think that's it. Yeah, that's basically
Switzerland?
it. No, well, Switzerland, if you're a U.S. citizen, no. Okay. And if you're not a U.S. citizen, because the Swiss no longer do any business with American citizens. They just don't, because they don't want to deal with the IRS anymore and the State Department, or they decided that it's better to just lose Americans as business clients than to have to deal with their shit. Okay. Number one. Number two, Switzerland is exceedingly expensive insofar as all the services are concerned. Okay. I mean, you're paying at least 5 times more for the whole setup in Switzerland. And there's also like a whole slew of new regulations in Switzerland, precisely because Switzerland became so famous as a place to park your money, okay? And that's why it just became expensive, and with a lot of regulations, it's not really worth it. Cyprus, though, on the other hand, that's something I'm sort of like exploring Cyprus at the time, so it's something to check out. Okay.
But this begs the question: how would you transfer, let's say, physical cash from a transaction?
Well, no, you don't physically transact cash. Okay. You just do wire transfer. What you do is you take a physical amount of cash, take it to whatever bank, and just transfer it electronically, and that's that. Okay. I mean, you don't deal with physical currency, and most businesses, large-scale businesses, successful businesses, you're not going to be dealing in cash. I mean, what company, what would you be dealing cash in? Something that is retail sales of some sort, okay? Whatever those retail sales are, that's the only reason that you'd be dealing in cash. Now, if you're dealing in some third world country, yeah, potentially you might be dealing in dollars, cash. I mean, I'm talking like a real shithole third world country. I'm talking about some crappy republic in Africa or someplace like that, okay? Because not even in Latin America. In Latin America, it's all electronic, okay? Electronic also because of the whole money laundering laws. They're very tight about that. But there are a lot of ways to comply with the money laundering laws, and yet at the same time maintain a certain degree of anonymity. Okay. Now, insofar as dealing with illegal businesses, I have no idea. I've never dealt in any kind of illegal business whatsoever. Every business I've ever dealt with is completely legal, sometimes boringly so. So that kind of like, okay, I got like a boatload of cash because I was selling heroin, right? I would have no fucking idea how to launder that cash and turn it, you know, into a legitimate bank account of like money laundering. I have no fucking idea of that. Okay, I'd be interested in that purely academically, but I wouldn't know, and I certainly wouldn't want to participate in anything of the sort because, you know, it's dangerous. I mean, fuck the IRS. It's like, you know, if you deal with any kind of illegal business, you know, some competitor might get wise and shoot you up to get your share of it. So fuck no, man. You know, I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, in the worst case, in the businesses that I deal with, in a worst case scenario, I might get sued, right? But that's the worst case. Nobody's going to show up with a gun to shoot me, man. I mean, so come on, right? So yeah, that's my thinking.
I mean, one of the issues I've had in the past working abroad is that, you know, I would make money, and for example, the Canadian authorities would not recognize it as, they call it insurable employment, because, you know, I didn't have any official records of employment. You know, I haven't been in a situation I had to go through audit, but imagine that we ask, you know, who is your employer? Where'd you get the money? Are there official transactions? And you're in a situation where it's a bit more casual, a bit informal, such as in Africa, and you still want to get the money out of there for reasons you explain, you know, instability or whatever. You want to transfer it to somewhere or through somewhere as quickly as possible for the safety of the money. And then you want to do something with the money. But a lot of people might question out, okay, where did you get the money? Is it legal or illegal? And what are you doing with it now? So how do kind of structures where you're working legally somewhere else, where the financial system is not developed, you're not getting too many official statements of transactions or employment, but you still want to get the money out of there and start investing it, you know, long term.
I don't know, because I mean, your setup is too hypothetical. I mean, do you have something specific in mind?
Okay, so as you mentioned, let's say someone goes to Africa and, you know, they have a good gatekeeper, they start making money.
Wait. Like, see, you're talking hypothetically, right?
No, actually, that's something I'm considering right now. I actually
okay.
had.
So where does the income stream start? In Africa?
Yes.
Okay. So you have, are you exploiting a natural resource, or do you have some invention, or what do you have in Africa? Not specifics, just.
It's more of a consulting PR business where, you know,
okay, so you're selling services
yes.
in Africa, and you're getting income in Africa, right?
Yeah.
And what do you want to do with this money? You want to get it out of Africa?
Yes.
And you want to get it where?
Somewhere where I can, you know, invest.
See, that's the mistake. That's the mistake. That's the first question I said. You just say, I want to get it out. No. You want to ask, it's not that you want it to leave. You want it to go somewhere. Figure out where you want it to go first. See? Because the structure of your question is you want it out of Africa. You don't care where. You're just like looking around at random, and that's the mistake. You're like, there's a lion chasing you and you're just running around at random. No, what you have to do is figure out the place where you want it to be.
Okay, I have a scenario for you.
Like say the following situation. Say this following situation. I get random money from anywhere. It doesn't matter. It falls in my lap. Okay. Where is the place I would want to invest this money? Like my top priority. let's just say, for the sake of argument, okay, that it would be London real estate in Southwest 1, okay, the billionaires row, because I got this money and I just want to park it in someplace safe. So I want to buy real estate in London in Southwest 1, which is a very prestigious location, and a lot of very rich people park their money there by way of buying a property, and there they have it. Okay, it's like a savings account made into a house. Okay, so I have the goal of where I want to go. Okay, now then I start to think, well, if I got this money in Africa, how do I get it to buy property in Southwest 1 in London? See? And then I work my way back. You got to figure out your destination first, and then you work your way back. Another metaphor. When you wake up in the morning, you don't hop in your car and start randomly driving around. You hop in your car because you already know where you're going. And maybe you have to take change directions and go here or there in order to get to your final destination, but you have a final destination in mind before you get in the car. See? So you have to have like a final destination for any income before you start getting the income. Not asking the question of where do I put it? No. That's the question that you have to answer first.
So my
What
offer
is it that you want? Yeah. Okay.
If someone wants to go to Africa first because that's where the opportunities are, that's where more money can be made. But for lifestyle reasons, getting married, they decide to set somewhere in Eastern Europe, maybe even Kharkov. So short-term business setup stage in Africa, let's say a few months, a year or two, and then with the goal in mind, I want to save money so I can move to Eastern Europe, buy a house, get a family, and start, maybe even invest in some property there. How would you set that up?
Well, okay, like the first thing I would do is if I know I'm going to be in Africa for a short time, and then I'm going to go to someplace in Eastern Europe, permanent. Okay, that's the plan. That's basically the strategy that you're outlining, correct?
I'm setting up short-term physical
No, so I'm
stay
just repeating what you just said to me. So I just want to make sure that I have it correct.
With the caveat that the business would remain operating in Africa, but you would be physically residing in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, okay, fine. So the smart thing would be to find a financial center that is a fulcrum of both Africa and the Eastern European destination. Cyprus would be the one, obviously, okay? And like, for instance, Singapore or Hong Kong would be for anything in Asia, for instance, right? And Panama would be for anything in the Americas, North, Central, South, right? These financial centers, they're fulcrums. Think of it in those terms, right?
Okay.
So in Europe, Europe and Africa, it would be Cyprus. And so what you do is you set up a company in Cyprus, right? And then you set up a company in Africa. And the African company does the business, but it has an exclusive contract with the Cyprus company. And the Cyprus company is selling something to the African country, okay? It's selling it some technology, or it's selling them some expertise, or selling it some consultancy. It doesn't really matter. Ultimately, it's vaporware. It's nothing. It's just so that on paper, there is a justification to have the money from the African company flow to the company in Cyprus. You see? Now, of course, the company in Cyprus has its bank account in Cyprus with a Cyprus bank, and the company in Africa has a bank account with an African bank, right? And so any income in Africa goes to the African bank account. That bank converts that money into dollars or euros or whatever, and pays the Cyprus company. And the money is all of a sudden in Cyprus. Now from there, you can do essentially the same thing and set up a company of some sort in Eastern Europe, the Eastern European country that you are interested in, and you transfer the money there as a payment of some sort, or as a loan, even better. And you structure it as a loan, and all of a sudden you have that company in Eastern Europe got this loan from this company in Cyprus, which is the justification for the cash that it has. And the company in Eastern Europe, in the Eastern European country, buys, say, property and rents it out. And the income that it generates, it pays back the loan that it had gotten originally from the Cyprus company. And so the income generated in the Eastern European country it flows back to Cyprus, to the Cyprus corporation, as payment for the loan, you see? And that would be a simple way to structure that.
Seems perfectly legal.
Well, you'd have to check in each of the jurisdictions to be double sure. You don't want to be breaking any law. See, that's the key issue. So long as you're not breaking the law, you're fine. Okay? You want to make sure that you're never breaking the law, that there is no justification that any authority could say, oh, you're in trouble. You see? You can bend stuff, but it's all how you structure something. See, like for instance, if the company in Eastern Europe is going to be buying property, right? It needs to have cash to have bought that property, right? So where does it get that cash? Well, the Cyprus company can pay it cash. Say that the company in Eastern Europe is doing some service for this company in Cyprus, right? And so it pays it cash, but then in the Eastern European country, that's considered income because it's payment, right? But if the company in Cyprus lends it money, well, that's a loan. It's not income. See? And so whatever the company in Eastern Europe earns in revenue via the rental from the property that it buys with that loan, well, it goes back to Cyprus to pay back that loan. You see? And that would be how it worked. See? You always want to be thinking about the difference between payment and a loan. A payment is income, but a loan, that's just cash that was transferred, but that has to be paid back. See, loans are the way you structure a company so that it has to pay back. See, before
Absolutely.
I was telling you that, you know, in the case of the relationship between the African company and the Cyprus company, see, the Cyprus company sold the African company a license for some technology. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be a license for rubber bands for all it matters, right? But it sold it this license, okay? And of course, it has to be dressed up so that it looks reasonable, right? And it's, or even better, it could be that, for instance, the African company, I'm just blue skying, the African company earns revenue from consulting work in Africa, right? Well, it could be that the consultant is actually the employee of the Cyprus company, and the African company selling these consulting services actually has to pay the Cyprus company for these consulting services. See?
Got it.
And so all the funds that are generated in Africa flow immediately to Cyprus. And the Cyprus company pays the employee who actually does the work in Africa. You see? And so that way, you know, all nice and tidy, and there's no tax exposure, right? I don't think so. I mean, I'm talking about this like blue skying it, just making it up as we're talking, okay? I mean, you'd have to sit down and really map it out and make sure that you don't expose yourself to any kind of tax liability. But the point I always want to emphasize, never, ever, 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 ever break the law. Never. And insofar as taxes are concerned, doubly so. You never want to break the law, okay? You always want it to be neat and boring. But you can be as clever as you want. Okay? You don't get penalized for being clever. Okay? You get penalized for breaking the law. If the law says you can't do something, don't do it. Just stay away from it and just recognize it as a condition of the game that you're playing. Okay? That's how you should approach it. Or at least that's the approach that I take. I have never broken the law, or any serious law at any rate. I mean, I've been speeding a few times, and actually, now that I think about it, every time I've gotten into trouble, it's been speeding on my motorcycle or an illegal maneuver when I was driving. Yeah, because the last time I got into trouble was I did an illegal U-turn in '96. Yeah, they gave me a ticket and a warning. Yeah, that was, you know, I did that in Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, they're touchy about their driving laws. But yeah, so, you know, keep that in mind. Anyway, Chris, great talking to you. I hope this has helped you out.
It has, and this is a concern I assume most people listening to you right now have, is that, you know, for those who see more opportunities elsewhere, they go there and they're successful. Okay, so what to do with the rewards, right? I mean, there's a certain amount of money one needs to survive in that location, but Anything else, you want to invest it, probably not in that location. You want to get it out of that location. As you say, you have to choose where you want to go for various reasons, whether it's London or Eastern Europe. But that apparatus is a bit complicated. So thank you for your insight.
Well, it's not complicated if you understand the following. See, a company has so many uses. It's so useful. And all you have to be concerned about is making sure that the income is registered in a place where there's no income tax or very little income tax. That's your goal. And so you structure it so that it's always loans or licenses that you're selling, okay? Or in other mechanisms that are tax-free, that avoid taxes, or let me phrase it, minimize taxes without breaking any tax law. That's the key issue. And it's all about structuring it, see? Any structure can be legitimate if it follows all the rules of the given market. It's just a very complicated game of chess. If you think of it in those terms and understand that it just has a lot of rules and limitations, but that you can play with those rules and limitations and a lot of times to your advantage, then it becomes real easy. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, thank you, Coach.
No problem. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, until next time.
You too. Let me see. Okay, my eyesight is completely shot. You know, I put on my contact lenses and the lettering is so small on the question part that I can't quite properly see it. I'm from, well, Seattle and Portland, Northeast. Nick Salzer. Yeah. Okay, so we've been ongoing for about 2 hours, so I'm gonna call it a webinar. But I just want to make it really clear to you about something. That the reason I did this is I made up my mind a number of years ago that I didn't want to live in the United States anymore, not permanently. I love going to the States. I've been there and I can go there whenever I feel like it, okay? I mean, it's not an issue that I can't go there. I just don't want to. I was there in early 2019 and I had a great time. It was lovely. I was in New York, I was in Knoxville in Tennessee, and I had a great time. Just, it's great. The problem is that I do not think that the United States is a particularly free country anymore. I think that it's not just the issue of like laws, but also you can't speak your mind anymore. And that's the thing that really bothers me. And I love the United States. I love American people because they are so friendly. They are among the friendliest people in the world. And people in America don't realize this, okay? But people in America are very, very friendly. Not in the cities, perhaps, but in other places, yeah, you know. And I've driven through the deep South and stopped there, here and there, in different places. And I can tell you, you know, like in Mississippi, nicest people imaginable. Nice, nice people. Alabama, same thing. I mean, I have nothing but the highest praise for a lot of these small towns and um, backwoods places that are just with the nicest people imaginable, you know? And so I have a great deal of affection for the United States. And I grew up in the United States, and in the 70s, I had an ideal version of what I considered America. And I saw it decay, especially in the 90s. I saw how the elites just betrayed the values of the country and just started working for themselves to the detriment of the country as a whole. And so I just didn't want to see that anymore. I just found it really sad. I think also because I realized that I was by socioeconomic background and education, I was raised to be part of that elite, but I view them with contempt. I think that they have no moral backbone. I just dislike them and despise them, the American elite. They're just low and cowardly people, you know? And they go along to get along, and they never stick up for anything, and they never say this is right and this is wrong, and I'm not going to accept what's wrong. They tolerate it. They tolerate evil. They tolerate wrongdoing. They tolerate it. And they're too chicken shit to make judgment about it. And I think that that's what bothered me the most about the United States. And that's why I have no intention of living there permanently. I might at some point in the future live there for a short period of time, a couple of years at most, in order to achieve some particular goal or other. But in terms of actually living there and dying there and like building a long-term life there, no, no, no. I mean, the only place I could imagine actually doing that would be someplace like in Alaska. You know, I've been to Alaska. I liked it a lot. Hated the mosquitoes though. That's the one problem. Yeah. But no, you know, I just don't, because there's this sense that authority can turn on you arbitrarily and hurt you badly. And I don't want to live in a country like that. But that's me. Okay. Anyway, I made up my mind years ago that I was going to live in the United States, and here I am. This isn't a choice for everyone. There are some people who just aren't cut out for this. There are a lot of people who decide to be an expat and they live away from the United States for a while and they become deeply, deeply unhappy, okay? Because they don't adapt to the new environment. And that's something that you have to know about yourself. And I think that this is the key point of this whole conversation. If you decide to leave wherever you're leaving, whether you're leaving from another country and want to go to the States or leaving the States to go to someplace else, right? You have to ask yourself, hand to heart, can you adapt? Can you change yourself to fit the new place that you are going to? The new place you're going to and fit in with the new people you're going to meet there. Can you adapt? A lot of people can't. A lot of Americans crazily, weirdly, absurdly think that the rest of the world has to adapt to them. That's not how it works. And they become miserable because they go someplace else and, you know, it's not like back home. There's no ranch dressing and no Frito-Lays and shit like that, right? And they get all down in the dumps about it. I'm being exaggerated, but not by much, because they don't recognize that they have to change. They have to adapt their tastes to what's available in the new place that they go to, right? A lot of guys, a lot of people, they can't do that. So that's the first thing that you should ask. Can I truly adapt? If the answer is no, then moving is not going to solve your problems. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this webinar. It's been a pleasure as always. I have to say, I really enjoyed doing webinars. You know, it's a high point of my week, to tell you the truth. And that goes to show you what a pathetic life that I live. But really, it's just a lot of fun because it gives me a chance once a week to think about some problem or other and really figure it out in a way that makes sense to me and hopefully to you, and hopefully illuminate a particular subject, because ultimately the point of these webinars is not to arrive at an undisputed truth. The point of these webinars is to stir both you and me into thinking about issues, thinking about them and arriving at our own conclusions. And whether we agree or not is secondary to the overriding goal of thinking through these issues and figuring them out. And perhaps there are central issues that we never really thought about or discussed, but are worth discussing, or sometimes essential to discussing. So anyway, with that deep thought, I bid you farewell, and I will catch you next week. Thank you so much, and take it easy.